Before learning any of the different cast-on techniques, the first skill you'll need to master is the slip knot. So making a slip knot is very easy. It's how you create the first loop of your cast on. So all I'm going to do is take your string, all right, and leaving about 6 inches of tail, perhaps more depending on the project, but just about 6 inches. Grasp the yarn here and make a loop. I do this just by twisting around my pointer finger. There's your loop. And then I will take the piece of yarn that's laying on top, bring it around the back and through the loop and pinch it, and then pull the tail to tighten. And there's your slip knot. You'll know that you've done it correctly when you can easily tighten the loop by pulling on the yarn and easily loosen the loop by pulling inside the loop. And it should be easy, it should slip right through, hence the name slip knot, right? So let's do it one more time. Take the yarn about 6 inches, pinch around the finger to create a loop, behind the back, pull it through, pull on the tail to tighten. There's your slip knot. Now we're ready to learn our first cast on. For our first cast on technique, we're going to do the E-wrap cast on. So we will start by making a slip knot and placing it on our first peg and tighten it like that. So next you will take your working yarn and you're going to E-wrap, easy wrap, the number of pegs you need to cast on. So to do the E-wrap, you go back behind the peg and around, all right? Behind the peg and around, behind, around, behind, around, behind, around, behind, around. One more. And then you can go ahead and scoot your stitches down. And then here you can either start wrapping around on the second to last, the penultimate peg, which is called slipping a stitch. So you would be slipping this stitch. Or you can double E-wrap this last peg and knit this peg as well. So we'll go ahead and double E-wrap the last peg. We will not slip a stitch, and we will come back around the other way in kind of a reverse E-wrap. So behind, around, behind, around, behind, around, all the way back. And same thing with this first one. You can either slip that stitch or you can wrap it like that. So now that we have 2 loops on each peg, we'll go ahead and knit each stitch over, starting with the slip knot. And there you have it. Now you can continue to work the stitches as required by your pattern. The next cast on technique we'll learn is the chain cast on. Now, if you have done crochet before, this should be a little more intuitive to you. But like we start most cast ons, we'll go create a slip knot. And instead of actually placing the slip knot on the first peg, as most other cast ons require, we're going to take the slip knot, make sure it's a fairly large loop, and take this loop and put it behind the first peg, like so. So we're going to take the loop, put it behind the peg, open up the loop, and bring the working yarn, not the tail, right? The tail we're gonna put to the side, but the working yarn will actually bring through and pinch and tighten. Let's do that one more time. So we have the slip knot. We'll take the slip knot, bring the loop around the back of the first peg, pull the working yarn through, pinch the working yarn, right? Have the tail separately to the side, pinch the working yarn, and tighten. All right, so you're gonna have another long loop here, right? And the tail off to the side, and you have your working yarn here. So once again, I'm gonna take this loop I have, bring the loop around the back of the second peg. Take the working yarn, feed it through this loop, pinch it, and tighten, like that. All right, again, loop around the back, working yarn through, pinch that working yarn, and tighten. So you're gonna wanna pull on this part to tighten it. All right, one more time around the back, working yarn through, and tighten. All right, and then once you've cast on the appropriate number of stitches for your project, you could take this last loop and just pop it on that last peg. Tighten it by pulling on your working yarn. Once you've reached that point, you can slip this last stitch and just continue knitting forwards, or you can go ahead and bring the yarn back around and knit that last stitch. So I'm gonna knit the last stitch, yarn over, and then I'll E-wrap back. So E-wrap, yarn over, E-wrap, yarn over, E-wrap, yarn over, E-wrap, yarn over. And that is your chain cast on. So that's the chain cast on. Now the final cast on technique that we're going to learn is the long tail cast on. And this cast on is unique because we will be using both the working end of the yarn and the tail end of the yarn at the same time. First, you're going to measure out about 3 times the length of how many stitches you need to cast on. So if I know I'm going to cast on all these stitches, these pegs, then I want to measure out about 3 times that length. So so this is about 1, a little more just to be safe. 2, 3, let's call it about there. So at the 3 times the length mark, you're going to make your slip knot. And I'm going to go ahead and put that on my first peg. And now to begin, I have 2 strands that I'm working with here, the tail end and the working end, right? The working end being attached to my ball of yarn and the tail end being the tail. So with the tail end, I'm going to just do a couple stitches at a time. I'm going to E-wrap. So E-wrap is right going around the back, around the back, around the back. I'll just do 3 at a time. So I've just E-wrapped 3. I'm gonna bring them down, and then I'm going to U-wrap, which is bringing around the front. All right, this is a little tricky. You kind of have to keep both ends fairly taut, and I'm going to knit over. And then I will U-wrap again. So my working yarn right here will go around the front and knit over, and around the front, knit over. Oop. All right, so now we have our tail and our working yarn here. So let's do that again. Let's do 3 more pegs. So I'm going to take my tail end, right, which is loose, not connected, and I will E-wrap 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Move those down. And then take the working yarn and U-wrap. So I'm going to U-wrap, knit over, U-wrap, knit over, and U-wrap, knit over. This is definitely one you want to practice because it can be a little tricky when you're working with 2 different strands at once. but it creates a nice little cast on. So you would just keep doing the same all the way to the end. And then when you turn back around, so let's say we're gonna turn back around here, I wanna make sure I have my tail end, put it to the back, and be sure that I am, when I turn around and start working back, that I'm using my working yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn, right, to work back. And again, like any cast on, you can slip the last stitch or go ahead and knit that stitch. And yeah, that is it.